The River of Time, Chapter 1. The night was calm, wrapped in the soft hush of 1,000 dreams. Above the hills, the moon drifted slowly, glowing like a silver lantern in the sky. The stars scattered gently across the heavens, twinkling as though they were whispering secrets to one another. The whole world seemed to be resting, holding its breath in stillness. At the edge of a quiet little village, where houses stood like sleeping guardians, lived a boy named Eli. He was small, only 7 years old, with curious eyes that often gazed at the world as if searching for hidden wonders. Sometimes, as the days passed, Eli found himself wondering about time. Why did the sun rise and then leave? Why did moments feel so bright, yet slip away so quickly? Why did memories stay in the heart long after the moment itself was gone? That night, Eli could not sleep. He lay in his small bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of crickets outside. The air was cool and the breeze moved softly through the open window, but his thoughts would not rest. It was as if something was gently calling him. Quietly, he got out of bed and tiptoed outside, careful not to wake his family. The ground was cool beneath his bare feet, and the grass felt damp with dew. He followed the soft path that led to the river, the place he often visited during the day. But tonight, the river seemed different. It shone under the moonlight, each ripple catching the glow like liquid glass. Eli paused and listened. The water made a sound like a lullaby, flowing slow and steady, as though it was breathing. And if he listened closely, very closely, he could almost hear voices. They were faint, like echoes carried on the wind, blending with the murmur of the stream. It was as though the river itself was telling old stories, forgotten by time but not truly gone. Eli leaned closer to the bank, his eyes wide with wonder. And then, out of the mist, he saw it, a small wooden boat gliding silently toward him. It had no oars, no sail, and yet it moved with purpose, as if the river itself carried it along. The boat shone faintly, polished by age and touched with moonlight. On its side, words were carved in glowing silver. The river of time awaits. Eli's heart beat faster. He had never seen anything like it. The boat stopped gently at the edge of the shore, as though it had been waiting for him all along. For a moment, Eli hesitated. The night was so still, the world so quiet, that he could hear his own breathing. But the boat seemed kind. Its glow was not frightening, but warm, inviting, like the comfort of a familiar voice. Taking a deep breath, Eli stepped into the boat. The wood was smooth beneath his hands, and the air inside felt calm and safe. The instant he sat down, the boat began to move. It glided smoothly away from the shore, carrying him deeper into the river's current. Eli looked back once, watching his village grow smaller behind him. The rooftops shimmered in moonlight, the fields stretched like dark blankets, and the hills guarded the horizon. Then, slowly, he turned to face forward. The river stretched endlessly before him, glowing with a path of silver light. Above, the stars seemed to follow, as if guiding his way. Eli wrapped his arms around himself and let out a quiet breath. He didn't know where the river would lead, but deep inside, he felt safe. The river of time had begun its story, and Eli was ready to listen. Chapter 2. The Lanterns. Eli woke to another morning. The sound of the river still flowed endlessly, as if it never knew the word rest. The sky above him was pale, like a piece of cloth washed by sunlight, until it had faded, and yet it felt strangely warm. The boy sat by the riverbank, gazing at his own wavering reflection in the water. He wondered whether the image was truly himself, or perhaps another child, living in the world beneath the river's surface. But then Eli's eyes caught upon something. Amid the current, a small light slowly rose. It was a paper lantern, round and fragile, its orange glow shining gently, like a softly beating heart. The lantern drifted closer along the current, as though it had chosen to find Eli. He reached out and touched its thin paper shell. A faint warmth passed into his fingertips, like holding the softest sunlight. Eli lifted the lantern carefully from the water. Up close, he noticed faint letters written upon the paper. The words read, "For the one seeking a path, remember, hope always lights the way." Eli's heart warmed with an indescribable feeling. It was as if someone who had once walked this journey left behind this message for the next traveler. The boy sat quietly for a while, then gently set the lantern back into the river, letting it drift on, just as its sender must have intended. He watched it float away until it became a tiny dot upon the water, vanishing into the distant mist. In his heart, Eli felt something greater than adventure. It was a peace he had never known before, as though the river was telling him ancient stories through the lantern's glow, and he was learning, little by little, how to listen. Eli drew a deep breath. The damp scent of water, grass, and earth filled him with the truth of this world. He smiled quietly, then rose to his feet and continued walking along the riverbank, not knowing what awaited ahead. But one thing he knew for certain: every step would bring new stories, slowly revealing themselves, just like that lantern. Chapter 3. The Bridge of Whispers. Eli followed the river onward. The sound of the flowing water became his closest companion, steady beside him at every step. Each footfall upon the soft grass was like a slow rhythm, calming his heart. Soon, the boy saw an old wooden bridge spanning the river. It was not grand, but it seemed to carry countless stories. Some planks had faded almost white, while others remained dark and sturdy, as if newly placed. Eli stepped onto the bridge. The wood creaked faintly, not with menace, but softly, almost like whispers surrounding him. He paused to listen. The voices were faint, yet clear enough to understand. They were the voices of travelers who had crossed before him, leaving traces of their feelings behind, as though the bridge had kept their memories. "I once crossed here on the day I was most afraid, yet I still kept walking. I walked across with my heart full of love. I once stood at the center, letting the river carry away all my sorrow." Eli stood quietly, listening. Every word became like a gentle comfort entering his heart. He walked on slowly. Each step upon each plank carried the weight of untold stories. When he reached the middle, Eli looked down. The river mirrored the sky, clouds drifting slowly, as if time itself had no need to hurry. The boy closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and exhaled softly, like releasing every worry into the flowing water. He didn't even know what burdens he carried, yet he felt suddenly lighter. At last he stepped off the bridge and turned back for one more glance. Sunlight shone through the planks, making the bridge seem to glow for a brief moment. Eli smiled faintly, then walked on along the path ahead. The river was still beside him, and the bridge's whispers still echoed within. Chapter 4. The Old Willow. After walking some distance, Eli came upon a great tree by the riverbank. It was an ancient willow, its long branches draped downward like a curtain, enclosing a quiet sanctuary. Eli approached. A gentle breeze stirred, swaying the willow's branches like arms inviting him to rest. He passed beneath the leafy veil and found himself in a small hidden chamber of nature. Outside sounds faded, leaving only the river's flow and the soft rustle of leaves. The boy sat beneath the shade, watching the flickering shadows of leaves dance upon the earth. Here, silence slowed his heartbeat, as though time itself had eased its pace. Eli lay down upon the soft grass. A few drops of water fell from the branches above, lingering from some past rain. They touched his skin with a coolness that made him smile. Then, a whisper arose from the willow. It was not the voice of a person, but the sound of wind trying to tell a story. Eli listened intently. Amid the breeze he heard soft words. "We have been here so long. We have seen countless travelers. Some rested only for a moment. Others fell asleep beneath our shade, but all left something behind with the river." The boy did not answer. He simply lay still, listening as though to a lullaby. The willow's words were unhurried, quiet, yet entered his heart gently. You too are leaving your story with the river. The river forgets nothing. It carries everything away and keeps it safe in time. Those words lulled Eli into a deep, peaceful rest. Not true sleep, but the deepest kind of repose, his heart cradled by branches and the sound of water. He did not know how much time passed. When he opened his eyes again, the sun's light had turned golden. The willow's branches swayed as though bidding him farewell. Eli stood, placed his hand gently upon the great trunk, and whispered thanks. Then he stepped back through the curtain of branches and returned to the river's path. Chapter 5. The Silent Boat. Not long after leaving the willow, Eli noticed something drifting upon the water. It was a small wooden boat, empty of passengers. Though aged, it was sturdy enough to carry someone along the current. The boat drifted closer to the shore, as though waiting for Eli. He hesitated for a moment, but when he looked at the long stretch of river ahead, a quiet voice within urged him to step aboard. As soon as he did, the boat began to move, slowly, steadily, without a single oar. It was as if the river itself knew its task, guiding him to where he must go. Seated in the middle of the river, everything grew quieter still. No footsteps, no rustling grass, only the steady rhythm of water lapping against the hull. Eli sat still, watching the sky and clouds reflected upon the water. It felt as though he was floating between two worlds, the world above and the world below, both merging until reality itself was blurred. Time slowed. A deeper calm settled within him. The many thoughts once circling in his mind faded until only awareness remained that he was here, moving with all things around him. Then a breeze drifted by, carrying the fragrance of wildflowers. It reminded him of blossoms he had seen along the bank that morning. He inhaled deeply, as if to keep the scent within him as long as possible. The boat drifted onward, unhurried. The river carried him around a bend, revealing new scenery. A wide meadow swaying in the wind like fabric released to billow beneath the sky. Eli gazed at it all with bright, quiet eyes, filled with gentle wonder. He did not know where the boat was taking him, yet felt no fear. The river itself had taught him, every path holds its own meaning. He trailed his fingers in the cool water along the side of the boat. That simple touch reminded him how real and how tender this moment was. Still the boat glided silently on. It was the river's lesson, to let go, and to learn to move with the current of time. Chapter 6. The Meadow of Echoes. The wooden boat continued drifting slowly along the river until it finally turned into an open passage. The river stretched into a vast meadow, as far as the eye could see, like a sea of green swaying with the wind. Eli gazed around in wonder. The tall grass bent and swayed, producing a rustling sound like waves breaking upon a shore. It was a strange kind of melody, yet it brought an incredible calmness to his heart. The little boy decided to step off the boat. The wooden vessel gently drifted a short distance away but remained nearby, as though waiting for him to return at any moment. Eli walked into the meadow, the gentle breeze stirring the grass so that it surrounded him on all sides. He tried speaking a simple word softly, "Hello." His voice did not fade into the air, but instead echoed back faintly, as if someone else had greeted him in return. That made him laugh softly, and he tried speaking again. "My name is Eli," the echo returned as a delicate whisper. Eli, Eli, as though the meadow had already remembered his name. He walked deeper and deeper. With every step, an echo came back to him like a small, endless conversation. The echoes didn't make him feel lonely. Instead, it felt like he had a companion who acknowledged every thought and every word. Eli lay down in the middle of the meadow, letting the grass surround him like a sea of green. The fresh fragrance of wild grass and tiny flowers filled his breath. Everything around him felt like resting upon a giant pillow made of soft feathers. He closed his eyes, listening to the echoes blending with the sounds of the wind and the flowing water from the river he could still faintly hear in the distance. Together, they formed a music of nature that needed no instruments. Time passed slowly. Eli didn't know how long he lay there, but when he opened his eyes again, the sunlight had softened into the warm orange glow of evening. The boy rose and turned back toward the riverbank. There, the wooden boat still floated, waiting patiently as before, never having left. He smiled, knowing it was time to continue his journey. He walked back calmly, stepped onto the boat once more, and allowed the river to carry him toward the new stories waiting ahead. Chapter 7. The Lanterns of the Night. The wooden boat drifted slowly through the gentle light of sunset. The sky shifted from golden orange to pale violet, and gradually into the darkness of night. Eli sat silently on the boat, watching as the first stars of the night appeared above. The small stars gleamed like tiny flames scattered across an endless canvas. Suddenly, he saw something floating upon the water. It was a small paper lantern glowing softly from within. The lantern glided down the current with grace, neither in haste nor too slow. Soon Eli's boat was surrounded by dozens of lanterns. The warm light from them reflected upon the river's surface, turning the entire river into a pathway of guiding flames. Eli reached out to touch one of the lanterns as it floated close. The light inside wasn't hot, but instead gave off a gentle warmth, like holding a piece of starlight in his hand. He watched as the lantern drifted away and wondered, where did these lanterns come from and who had released them into the river? But instead of searching for an answer, Eli chose to simply watch. His curiosity slowly melted into quiet joy, like a child watching snow fall for the first time. Looking around, he noticed that these lanterns did not only float forward. At times, they reflected their light back at him, as if whispering, "You too are part of this path of light." The boat drifted slowly amidst the glowing lanterns. Eli closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the lanterns and the whispers of the river lull him into peace. After a while, he seemed to see visions within a dream. Crowds of people standing along faraway riverbanks, each releasing small lanterns into the water. Every lantern carried a silent prayer within it. Eli felt as though he was journeying amidst the dreams of countless souls. Each lantern was someone's hope, someone's longing, or someone's love entrusted to the river to carry onward. The boat continued gently forward. Lanterns surrounded him like stars upon the water. Eli smiled softly, his heart warm as if accompanied by hundreds, even thousands of companions traveling alongside him. Chapter 8. The Bridge of Whispers. When the boat finally passed beyond the stream of lanterns, the light around him gradually faded. The night sky above glittered with countless stars, and Eli felt as if the river below and the heavens above were joined together as one. Before long, he saw something spanning across the river ahead, a wooden bridge, old and weathered, yet strong enough for someone to walk upon. As the boat drew closer, faint sounds began to rise. They weren't the wind nor the water, but whispers, soft voices carrying conversations lost in time. Eli stepped off the boat onto the bridge as it brushed the edge. The wood creaked beneath his feet with every step, but it didn't feel frightening. Instead, it felt warm, as if he was walking along a road paved with stories. He paused and listened. One voice sounded like a child's laughter, another like verses of a poem recited long ago. Others were simple words once spoken in distant days. He began to understand that the bridge was not built of wood alone, but also from fragments of memories left behind by those who had crossed it. Every step was a step upon echoes of the past. Eli whispered softly, "Tonight is so peaceful." The bridge received his words, then returned them as a gentle echo, like a song sung once more by a voice from long ago. The boy smiled and walked on slowly, letting all the whispers surround his heart. When he reached the middle of the bridge, he looked down into the river below. The stars above were reflected upon the surface, mingling with the glow of distant lanterns still floating downstream. The sight was as though he stood in the midst of an ocean of light. Eli closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and felt himself becoming part of the endless story of this river. When he finally crossed to the far side, the boat was waiting quietly, as though it had always known its duty. The boy stepped aboard again and let the current carry him onward toward new mysteries yet unseen. Chapter 9. The Garden of Forgotten Songs. The boat drifted gently along the calm river. After crossing the bridge of whispers, Eli noticed the scenery on both banks begin to change. The dense forest gave way to a vast and silent garden. This garden was filled with tall trees standing like ancient pillars. But instead of ordinary green leaves, their branches bore translucent leaves, like panes of glass. Whenever the wind stirred them, Eli didn't hear the usual rustle of foliage. Instead, soft music filled the air, like melodies unknown to him. The boy sat upright, listening intently. It sounded like ancient songs left behind, songs no one sang anymore, but which had not vanished. They had simply taken refuge here, in this garden. He stepped off the boat slowly, walking into the garden. Around him the music swelled gently. From some trees came sounds like flutes, from others the soft strings of a harp, and from others still the tender lullabies of old. Eli realized at once this was the Garden of Forgotten Songs, a place where every melody that had been abandoned or lost to time was preserved. He stopped beneath one tree whose leaves sang a slow lullaby. The sound wrapped warmly around him, easing his heart like a mother cradling her child into sleep. Closing his eyes, Eli tried to hum along. Though he had never heard the song before, it was as if the melody guided his breath and lips to follow. His voice merged with the music of the glass-like leaves above until they became one song. Suddenly, the whole garden seemed to tremble slightly. The songs of other trees joined in, harmonizing with Eli's voice until the garden resonated with a deep, gentle symphony. Eli stood still, letting the music embrace him. These melodies did not excite his heart. They eased it. They brushed away weariness, like waves of sound smoothing the soul. As the music slowly faded, Eli opened his eyes and looked back toward the river. The wooden boat was still waiting for him, steady as ever. He smiled softly, bowing his head as if in gratitude to the garden, then walked back to the boat. The current carried him away, while the last notes of the garden lingered faintly, whispering, "Every song still lives if there is a heart to listen." Chapter 10. The Lantern Keeper. After leaving the Garden of Forgotten Songs, the river grew darker once again, as though it was guiding Eli into a deeper part of the night. Yet within the darkness, he saw small lights floating above the water, tiny lanterns glowing softly, swaying with the wind. Eli watched closely until his boat drifted nearer, and then he saw an old man standing upon the riverbank. The elder held a long staff, and from its end hung many small lanterns. Each lantern glowed with a warm light that made the surrounding darkness feel anything but heavy. The old man looked at Eli and smiled gently. His eyes shone with a calmness like someone who had known time for a very long while. "Little one, you are a traveler upon the river of time, are you not?" His voice was so soft and deep that Eli could not tell whether it was speech or the sound of the wind. Eli nodded slowly. "Yes, I have followed the river without knowing where it will lead." The old man chuckled softly. "So it is for everyone who has ever journeyed upon this river. None know the destination. What matters is seeing the small lights along the way." Then he lifted one lantern from his staff and handed it to Eli. The boy received it carefully. Its light was gentle, warm, like holding a fire on a cold night. "This is the light of the little memories you have made upon your journey," the old man said. "It will guide you through the nights that feel too silent, through the shadows that seem too deep." Eli gazed at the lantern in his hands. Its glow was not brilliant, yet bright enough to let him see around him. It was a reminder that so long as he held on to his memories, the darkness could never truly consume him. The boy lifted his eyes in gratitude. The old man nodded and slowly faded into the darkness, like nothing more than a reflection of time. Only the lantern in Eli's hands remained, still shining gently. The boat drifted onward into the widening river, lanterns surrounding him like stars guiding his way. Eli held the lantern to his chest, closed his eyes, and let the sound of the flowing river soothe him into deeper peace. Chapter 11. The Island of Silent Bells. The river widened into a vast stillness, as though time itself had paused. The current slowed, and Eli felt the boat gliding gently toward a shape that began to rise from the water ahead. It was an island, small, round, and shrouded in silver mist. The mist curled and drifted like soft veils, hiding and revealing glimpses of what lay within. As the boat drew closer, Eli could see tall spires rising from the island's heart. They were not trees nor towers, but bells, countless bells of every size, standing silently upon stone pedestals. The strange thing was that not one of them rang. Eli stepped from the boat onto the shore. The air here felt heavy, though not with fear. It was the weight of silence, itself, deep and absolute, as if the world was holding its breath. He walked carefully between the bells, gazing at their surfaces. Some were smooth and polished like new metal. Others were weathered and cracked, bearing marks of time. He paused before one tall bell that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Almost instinctively he reached out and touched it with the tip of his finger. A vibration stirred. A soft hum escaped, faint at first, then deepened into a sound so low it was more felt than heard. The note rolled across the island like ripples across a lake. And then other bells began to stir. From every corner of the island, bells answered, one by one, releasing voices long held in silence. Some rang with tones clear and high, like crystal, others with low, resonant booms that trembled in Eli's chest. Slowly, the silence unraveled into a chorus of sound, grand, solemn, and hauntingly beautiful. Eli stood in awe, the music weaving around him. He realized that each bell was not merely an instrument, but a keeper of unspoken memories. Every tone carried something left unsaid, words never spoken, farewells never given, dreams never voiced. Together they formed a symphony of what had been left behind. He closed his eyes, listening. Among the deep chords and fragile notes, he thought he heard fragments of voices, someone's laughter, a whispered goodbye, even the soft weeping of a child. The music was not sorrowful nor joyful, but something larger, something that embraced every shade of feeling at once. The boy pressed his palm over his heart and whispered, almost unconsciously, "I hear you." And as if in response, the bells swelled louder, until the whole island glowed faintly with sound, like a lantern made not of flame but of resonance. Then, as suddenly as it began, the chorus softened. One by one, the bells quieted, their echoes fading back into the stillness. The silence returned, but it was no longer heavy. It was a silence filled with remembrance, not emptiness. Eli exhaled slowly, realizing he had been holding his breath. He bowed his head to the silent bells, as though thanking them for sharing their hidden voices. When he returned to the shore, the wooden boat was waiting. The mist parted gently, as if inviting him onward. Eli stepped aboard, holding the lantern from the old keeper close against his chest. The boat drifted back into the dark river. Behind him the island faded into mist once more, but in his heart the sound of the bells lingered, an unspoken promise that even silence carries its own music if only one listens. Chapter 12, The House of Quiet Dreams. After resting in the endless meadow for what felt like eternity, Eli opened his eyes once more and found the little boat waiting by the riverbank, as if it had never left. The child stepped aboard again, letting the river carry him gently onward. This time the water curved around a wide bend, flowing past a forest so still that the only sound was the whisper of wind through the treetops. Further along, a small wooden house appeared by the bank, simple in form, with a single door and a tiny window welcoming the breeze. The faint creak of wood rose and fell, like the breathing of someone in deep slumber. Eli felt drawn to step ashore. He approached the house quietly, and when he pushed open the door, what lay inside was not an ordinary room, but a chamber filled with soft beds neatly arranged. Upon each bed lay someone peacefully asleep. Some smiled faintly, as though in the midst of a sweet dream. Others shed quiet tears, as if releasing sorrow within their sleep. Yet no matter the expression, every face was bathed in a tender calm. As Eli walked slowly past, he noticed that above each bed floated a small light, like a gentle star glowing softly, seeming to be each person's dream, carefully cradled and preserved. He stood there with warmth swelling in his chest, realizing that this house was a sanctuary for weary souls, a place to rest and surrender to dreams of stillness. Then, a gentle voice rose from a corner of the room. Every journey needs a resting place. Every heart needs a dream of peace. Eli turned and saw an elderly woman seated in a wooden chair. Her face glowed with kindness, like a grandmother who had watched over countless lives. She smiled at the boy. "You may rest here if your heart is tired. But remember, peaceful dreams are only a bridge to help you walk on, not the journey's end." Eli nodded, understanding without need for more words. He chose an empty bed and lay down, embraced at once by warmth and softness. As his eyelids slowly closed, he felt himself sinking into the gentlest dream, one without beginning or end, only a calm that held him without haste. Chapter 13, The Corridor of Echoes. Eli awoke once more inside the House of Dreams, but when he stepped out of bed, everything around him had changed. The silence was so deep it felt as though time itself had stopped. Where there had once been a wooden door, there now stretched a corridor, long and endless, fading into the distance. It was no ordinary hallway. Soft moon-like light spilled across the walls, weaving shadows that seemed alive. Along both sides stood countless doors, each carved with different patterns, as though each one carried a hidden story waiting to be told. As Eli walked slowly forward, a faint sound rose around him. It was an echo, gentle and distant, like voices drifting through a cave. But instead of being frightening, the sound was tender, warm, like the memory of something once cherished. He paused before one of the doors. At once the sound of soft laughter spilled out, bright, childlike laughter, full of joy. Eli smiled without realizing it, his heart lifting before continuing down the corridor. The next door held something different. A muffled sound of quiet weeping escaped, carrying sorrow with it. Yet, when Eli listened closely, he could feel comfort beneath it, as though those tears had already been held and soothed. It was not the cry of loneliness, but of a heart that had been gently embraced. Every door was a memory, every sound an echo of someone's heart. Eli walked in peace, never rushing, never judging, simply listening, letting each memory wash over him like music shifting from note to note. The deeper he went, the more he felt that this was not just a passageway. It was a path woven from human feeling itself, laughter, tears, joy, fear, all blended together into one endless song. When Eli reached the heart of the corridor, he stopped. The echoes began to converge, drawing together until they became a single sound, It was simple, steady, the sound of a heartbeat. Eli closed his eyes, letting that rhythm fill him with calm. It was the pulse of life itself, not hurried, not delayed, but flowing gently forward. Chapter 14. The Garden Between Moments. When the echoes faded into silence, the corridor opened to a soft light. Eli stepped forward and found himself standing in a vast garden. This garden was unlike anything he had ever seen. Tall trees rose high into the sky, yet cast no shadows. It was as though light and shade had blended into one. The leaves shimmered gently, glowing with both moonlight and sunlight at once. Around him, flowers were blooming, not all at once, but slowly, gracefully. Some remained tightly closed, others unfurling one petal at a time. Yet every flower seemed to move to the same rhythm, as if they bloomed not with the seasons, but with the flow of time itself. As Eli walked across the grass, he noticed something remarkable. With each step he took, small blossoms sprang open beneath his feet, glowing briefly before closing again once he had passed. It was as if the garden itself was responding to his presence. At the center of the garden stood a wall of vines, curling around a crystal-clear pool. Eli leaned over and gazed into the water. But the pool did not only reflect his face, it revealed moments from his life. He saw himself running and laughing freely. He saw himself crying in pain. He saw himself sitting quietly under the sky, wrapped in silence and solitude. The images shifted endlessly, one after another, as though the pool whispered, "Every moment matters." Eli reached out and touched the surface of the water. Instantly the images dissolved into gentle ripples, fading away as if carried off by the wind. In that moment he understood time, joy and sorrow alike, was not meant to remain separate. It all flowed together into one vast story, just like this garden itself. The boy sat beside the pool, breathing slowly. He felt everything in the garden moving in rhythm with his heart, the heart that lived between past, present, and future, without rushing, without delay. The breeze stirred softly through the flowers, as if whispering to him, "This is a place of rest," a pause, before the journey down the river of time continues. Chapter 15. The Bridge of Quiet Steps. After resting in the garden between moments, Eli rose once more. Before him the river of time appeared again, calm and still, as though it had never left. The little boat drifted forward to meet him. Eli stepped aboard, and the water carried him onward. Soon a pale mist wrapped around him, muffling all sound, wrapping him in a gentle silence. As the mist lifted, he saw it, a bridge stretching across the river. It was not made of wood or stone. It was woven of moonlight and starlight, a translucent path glowing faintly above the water. Each step upon it made no sound at all. Eli left the boat and placed one foot upon the bridge. With every step he took, a memory brushed against his heart, as though the bridge itself was testing the weight of his spirit. At the first step he heard the carefree laughter of his younger self. At the next, a faint sob, familiar and fragile. But the farther he walked, the quieter the echoes became, until they faded into nothing more than a passing breeze. At the center of the bridge, Eli stopped. Looking down, he saw the river below, still and glass-like, reflecting the night sky. Above and below, the stars were the same, as though heaven and water had become one endless mirror. Eli stood in silence, and a truth settled gently upon him. Every sound he had heard, every step he had taken, none of it was a burden. They were simply stories the river of time had carried. He did not need to hold them all. It was enough to let them flow. When his heart felt lighter, he began walking again. At last he reached the far end of the bridge, where a great door awaited him. It looked like wood, yet light glowed softly through the cracks along its frame. Eli drew a deep breath. He knew that beyond it, another chapter of the river of time awaited. Chapter 16. The Library of Endless Whispers. Eli pushed the heavy door with his small hands. It creaked softly, and warm light spilled out from within. Stepping inside, he found himself in a place unlike anything he had ever seen. Before him stretched a vast library, so immense that no end could be seen. The ceiling soared high above, and endless shelves towered in every direction, filled with countless books. Some covers glowed faintly, while others seemed to rest in silence as if asleep. The library was quiet, but not an empty silence. It was a silence alive with whispers, soft voices that drifted from the books themselves, each one murmuring its own story in a language too gentle to be fully heard. Eli walked slowly, his fingertips brushing along the spines of the books. Suddenly, one voice grew clearer. "This is the story of the day you laughed." He opened the book, and at once an image appeared, moving like a living memory. Himself as a child running through a sunlit meadow, laughter ringing in the air. He closed the book and picked another. A new whisper spoke. "This is the day tears fell, yet you did not break." The pages revealed a rainy night, himself sitting beneath the dark sky. Though his heart was heavy, a small smile had still found its way to his face. Every book preserved a piece of his journey, not to weigh him down, but to remind him that all of it was part of the river of time. Eli walked deeper until he reached a great wooden table at the center. Upon it lay a single book open to blank pages. As he placed his hand upon them, a whisper stirred again. "This book waits for you. The story yet unwritten will be shaped by the steps you choose." He looked up at the endless shelves around him and understood. The past did not bind him. It simply reminded him that new stories were always waiting. A gentle smile touched his lips. He rose from the table and walked toward another glowing doorway, calling him onward. Chapter 17. The Staircase of Gentle Echoes. Beyond the library door, Eli found himself at the foot of a vast staircase. Unlike any he had ever seen, it rose into the darkness above, endless and mysterious. Each step was carved from translucent stone, glowing faintly from within. When Eli stepped forward, his footsteps echoed, not as ordinary sound, but as words, spoken softly back to him. The first step whispered, "You have the courage to begin." The next step answered, "Though confusion may come, still you move forward." Eli paused, glancing down. The steps below glimmered faintly, each one shining with the memory of his passage. None of his steps had vanished. They remained, quietly reminding him that every step mattered, no matter how small. He smiled and climbed higher. Above, the stars grew brighter, as if waiting for him. Another step spoke, "You are part of a story far greater than you imagine." And another, "Do not fear the unknown path. Your journey itself is meaning." At last, after countless steps, he reached the top. A wide platform opened before him, paved with starlight, gleaming as though woven from the heavens. And there, standing tall at the far end, was a gate made entirely of starlight threads, shimmering in the cosmic dark. Eli drew a deep breath. A new chapter of the journey awaited. Chapter 18. The Garden of Silent Stars. As Eli touched the gate of starlight, it opened silently, bathing him in warm radiance. He stepped through, and what awaited him was a breathtaking garden spread across the sky itself. The ground glowed with grass like silver frost. Flowers bloomed everywhere, each one made not of petals but of light. Some shone gold, some silver, and some gleamed like eternal drops of dew. Above him stretched no ordinary sky, but a vast expanse of stars. Yet they did not seem distant. They floated low, close enough to touch. Eli walked quietly. Each step made no sound, as though silence itself embraced his heart. Then he saw it, the great tree at the garden's center. Its branches bore no leaves, but instead glowed with countless tiny stars like fruit of the heavens. He stood in awe as a voice, deep yet gentle, echoed within his heart. Every star upon these branches is a dream unforgotten. Eli reached out to touch one. It pulsed warmly, like a small beating heart. Closing his eyes, he glimpsed a childhood dream, of flying, of wandering, of finding true friendship. When he opened his eyes again, the star had returned to the tree, leaving behind a faint glow in his hand. A reminder that dream would remain with him always. Walking around the great tree, Eli felt a deep calm settle within. He understood now, sometimes. What keeps us moving forward is not knowing the destination, but the light of dreams that guide the way. Ahead, a narrow path stretched into darkness once more. Eli pressed a hand to his heart and stepped forward. Chapter 19. The Corridor of Shadows. The path narrowed into a long, dark corridor. The starlight behind him faded until all that remained was silence and shadow. Eli walked slowly, his heart beating harder. He was not afraid as before, yet the emptiness pressed cold against him. Then he heard it. Footsteps, at first like his own but somehow different, echoes that followed a little too closely. He stopped, the sound stopped. He turned back. No one, only the void. Breathing deeply, he walked on. This time the echoes returned, sharper, whispers hidden within them. "You are tired, aren't you? You've come this far, but will you truly go further?" Shadows stirred along the walls, shifting into shapes of a boy like himself, but with dark, hollow eyes. Eli realized at once this was no stranger. It was his own shadow, his doubts, fears, and uncertainties given form. The shadow spoke low. "Do you really believe going forward has meaning?" Eli closed his eyes, listening to his own heart. Then he spoke, softly yet firmly. "My steps need no perfect reason. I choose to walk on because I still wish to see what waits ahead." For a moment, the shadow trembled. Then it broke apart into smoke, fading into nothingness. The corridor brightened faintly, soft blue light guiding the way forward. Eli smiled gently. Though darkness remained around him, his heart now shone brighter than before. Chapter 20. The Bridge of Whispering Winds. After the shadows vanished, Eli walked on until the corridor opened into a vast chasm. Spanning it was a bridge unlike any other, woven not of stone or wood, but of wind itself. The currents twined together into translucent strands, shimmering like silk in the dark. Eli stepped carefully. The bridge swayed lightly, but held firm beneath his feet. He walked forward, step by step. Then he heard them, whispers carried on the wind. Countless voices, some tender, some sorrowful, all surrounding him. "Do not give up. I am always with you. You will reach the other side." He paused midway across. The wind encircled him gently like an embrace. Closing his eyes, the whispers became clear, voices he knew well, his mother's lullabies, his friends' laughter, even his own younger voice whispering, "We will never stop dreaming." Eli smiled. He understood. The bridge was not woven of mere wind, but of promises and memories. He stepped onward. The whispers blended together, becoming one steady voice, the calm, unwavering breath of the wind. At last he crossed to the other side. Light spread warmly across the new shore, filling him with a deep peace. His heart felt lighter, as though the winds had carried his worries away. Chapter 21. The Valley of Forgotten Echoes. As Eli stepped off the bridge, he found himself standing in a vast valley, filled with dull-colored stones and ancient ground, as though time itself had long stood still here. The silence was so deep he could almost hear his own heartbeat. But soon, faint echoes drifted toward him with the wind. At first it sounded like nothing more than the breeze. Yet when he listened carefully, he realized they were words, whispers not of strangers, but of something familiar. The voices of forgotten memories. "Why don't you try once more? That day we never got to say goodbye. Do you still miss me?" The echoes resonated across the cliffs, like voices carried from the past. Eli's chest trembled, for he began to recognize them, the voices of people, moments, and feelings he had once let slip by unnoticed. Slowly he walked deeper into the valley. Shadows shimmered faintly from the stones, taking shape as figures of the past, friends long gone, smiles once shared, words he had never answered. Eli stopped in the center of the valley, drew a deep breath, and whispered softly, "Even if I forget, it does not mean those memories have no worth. They live within my heart, always." At his words, the shadows and echoes began to fade, softening into nothing more than a gentle breeze. The once empty valley glowed with a tender light, like the pale mist of morning. With lighter steps, Eli walked on. He now understood that though some things are forgotten, they never truly vanish from who we are. Chapter 23. The Crossroads of Choices. When the golden light of the Garden of Seasons faded, Eli found himself at a vast crossroads. 4 paths stretched endlessly before him, each radiating a different world. The first glimmered with countless stars, as if leading toward grand dreams. The second lay in shadow, yet faint sparks glowed within, like a journey filled with trials, yet holding deep meaning. The third resembled a quiet garden, with gentle streams and birdsong, a place of peace. The fourth was empty, no light, no sound, as though time itself never moved there. Eli stood at the center, his heart trembling. This was more than choosing a path. It felt like choosing a destiny. A voice surrounded him, its source unknown. Every choice carries meaning, not because of where it ends, but because of the path itself. What you will see, what you will become, these are born from the steps you take. The boy closed his eyes, breathing deeply. He remembered all he had faced, his newfound courage, the friendships given to him, the memories that lingered warm within his heart. When he opened his eyes again, he smiled and stepped forward onto one path without hesitation. At once, the crossroads faded, leaving only a single glowing road ahead. Warm light shone to guide him. Eli understood now. What mattered was not which path he chose, but that he chose with confidence and walked it with a heart true to his dream. Chapter 24. The Guardian of the Current. The path led Eli to the banks of a vast river. Here the waters were no longer gentle. They surged with dazzling strength, like threads of starlight twisting together. From the center of the river, a towering figure arose. It was not human, but formed of living water and silver light, flowing like a body made of the current itself. A deep, resonant voice echoed from every direction, "Child, you have come far. You have crossed fear, memory, and choice. But before you reach the heart of the river, you must answer one question." Eli's eyes held steady. "What is the question?" The guardian bowed slightly, the waters swirling around him. "What is it you truly seek in this journey? The truth of time, a dream fulfilled, or a resting place in the eternal current? Answer with your heart, for your answer will shape your path." Eli closed his eyes. Strangely, he felt no fear, only calm. He thought of all he had seen, the bridge that carried him, the valley of echoes, the seasons turning, the crossroads of choices. At last, he spoke, softly but firmly. "I did not travel to uncover the secrets of time, nor to seek greatness. I only wish to learn how to move forward without fear." At his words, the river blazed with light. The raging waters stilled into a gentle stream, and the guardian's voice grew warm. "You have answered with your true heart. That is what the river of time seeks." With a graceful motion, the guardian parted the waters, revealing a radiant path across the current. Eli stepped forward with confidence, heading toward the deepest heart of the river. Chapter 25. The Heart of the River. The glowing path led Eli further into the river's depths. The waters, once fierce, now shimmered like glass, reflecting all the stars above. He walked in silence until the world around him grew still. No sound remained but the rhythm of his own heart. At last he arrived at a place vast yet boundless. Beneath him, the water glowed with light. Above him, the sky shimmered with stars. But strangely, water and sky mirrored one another, as if they were one, without line, without end. And at the very center floated a single drop of water, shining faintly, like a diamond that breathed. A gentle yet resonant voice spoke. This is the heart of the river of time, a single drop that holds all past, present, and future within it. Eli gazed in awe. Within the drop he saw every memory, both joy and sorrow, every choice, every step he had ever taken, glowing together as one. He reached out, touching it lightly. In that instant, the waters around him burst into countless visions, moments he had not yet lived, laughter waiting ahead, tears he might one day shed, friendships yet to come, and dreams not yet born. Tears filled his eyes, but not from sadness. He understood now. Time was not something to conquer, but something that nourished life, making it beautiful. The voice spoke again. You have seen. Now return with a heart unshaken, for in every time you shall never lose your way. The drop of water slowly drifted into Eli's heart. Golden light embraced him, and in a single breath he felt himself carried back to the shore of a new beginning. Chapter 26. The Return Flow. When the drop of time entered his heart, Eli felt his body grow light, as though he had become part of the river itself. The warm current gently wrapped around him, carrying him back along the path he had once traveled. When he opened his eyes again, he was standing on the bank of the river of time. But this time, everything looked different. The sky was brighter, the waters clearer, and even the passing wind felt softer, more tender. Eli gazed at his reflection in the river. He still saw the same small boy, yet his eyes were calmer, steadier, glowing with a quiet light that had not been there before. The voice of the guardian rose once more, but now it was gentle, like the voice of a friend. You have learned that time is not an enemy. The truest journey is to know your own heart. Eli smiled. He did not answer with words. Instead, he bowed his head slightly in gratitude before turning away, back toward the long path stretching beyond the river. He walked slowly, but each step was steady, as if no matter how the world might change, he was ready to face it, with a heart both strong and tender. As he moved farther away, the sound of the river faded into silence, leaving behind only a warmth that remained within him. Chapter 27. The Final Test. Eli left the river of time in peace, but soon he discovered the path ahead was no longer simple. Before him lay a vast meadow, shrouded in heavy fog, stretching without end. He drew in a deep breath and stepped into the mist. With each step, something strange occurred. Shadows appeared, taking the shape of himself at different ages. A small boy too afraid to stand on his own. A child who once cried in fear of the dark. A boy who hesitated to walk forward, doubting his own strength. One by one, these shadows stood before him, blocking his way, their eyes filled with fear. Eli stopped. He looked at them with gentle eyes, not with anger nor denial, but with understanding. He stepped closer, placed his hand softly on the shoulder of the frightened boy before him, and whispered, "It's all right now. I am here. We will walk together." In that instant, the shadows began to dissolve into tiny lights, drifting into Eli's own body, as though every fear that once clung to him had been embraced, transformed into inner strength. The fog lifted, fading into clear air, revealing a path that stretched toward a shining light ahead. The wind whispered softly, as if speaking just to him, "You are ready." For the first time, Eli's smile was filled with perfect calm. He walked on without hesitation, not knowing where the road might lead, but knowing his heart was strong enough to face whatever awaited him. Chapter 28. The Endless Horizon. When the last of the mist dissolved, Eli stood before a boundless plain. The horizon glowed warmly, like the first light of dawn. The path stretched onward into infinity, yet this time he felt no fear at all. He stopped, breathed deeply, and lifted his gaze to the sky. The stars that had once scattered across the heavens slowly faded, leaving only the sun's first light shining down upon his road. The final voice of the river drifted to him, soft as a breeze. Your journey has only begun. The river of time never ends. But you now carry a heart that can walk forward. Eli placed a hand upon his chest where the drop of time had merged with him. He felt a quiet strength flowing within, as though no matter which road he chose, the river would always flow beside him. He smiled gently, then stepped forward toward the endless horizon. Each step was steady, filled with hope and peace, and as he walked farther away, the sound of wind, the murmur of the river, and the beating of his own heart blended into one, a silent song without end. Epilogue. The gentle current. The night was quiet. The river of time still flowed endlessly, its waters reflecting the stars as though holding the whole universe within its current. On the shore, a small boy sat with his eyes closed. He no longer needed to travel anywhere, for now he knew that the river of time was never far away. It had always flowed within his heart. The breeze drifted softly. The river whispered faintly, telling a story without end, a story for the weary so they may rest, a story for the anxious so they may let go, a story for those unable to sleep so they may find gentle peace. Eli's eyes slowly closed. His heart remained warm with the light of friendship, courage, and the quiet strength he had discovered along his journey. The sound of wind and water lingered close, unhurried, endless, never leaving anyone behind. And if you close your eyes tonight, perhaps the river of time will carry you too, not to reach any destination, but to rest your heart and to let you drift into a gentle sleep. Chapter 21. The Valley of Forgotten Echoes. As Eli stepped off the bridge, he found himself standing in a vast valley, filled with dull-colored stones and ancient ground. The silence was so deep he could almost hear his own heartbeat. But soon, faint echoes drifted toward him with the wind. At first, it sounded like nothing more than the breeze. Yet when he listened carefully, he realized they were words, whispers not of strangers, but of something familiar. The voices of forgotten memories. Why don't you try once more? That day, we never got to say goodbye. Do you still miss me? The echoes resonated across the cliffs, like voices carried from the past. Eli's chest trembled, for he began to recognize them, the voices of people, moments, and feelings he had once let slip by unnoticed. Slowly he walked deeper into the valley. Shadows shimmered faintly from the stones, taking shape as figures of the past, friends long gone, smiles once shared, words he had never answered. Eli stopped in the center of the valley, drew a deep breath, and whispered softly, "Even if I forget, it does not mean those memories have no worth. They live within my heart, always." At his words, the shadows and echoes began to fade, softening into nothing more than a gentle breeze. The once empty valley glowed with a tender light, like the pale mist of morning. With lighter steps, Eli walked on. He now understood that though some things are forgotten, they never truly vanish from who we are. Chapter 23. The Crossroads of Choices. When the golden light of the Garden of Seasons faded, Eli found himself at a vast crossroads. 4 paths stretched endlessly before him, each radiating a different world. The first glimmered with countless stars, as if leading toward grand dreams. The second lay in shadow, yet faint sparks glowed within, like a journey filled with trials, yet holding deep meaning. The third resembled a quiet garden, with gentle streams and birdsong, a place of peace. The fourth was empty, No light, no sound, as though time itself never moved there. Eli stood at the center, his heart trembling. This was more than choosing a path. It felt like choosing a destiny. A voice surrounded him, its source unknown. Every choice carries meaning, not because of where it ends, but because of the path itself. What you will see, what you will become, these are born from the steps you take. The boy closed his eyes, breathing deeply. He remembered all he had faced, his newfound courage, the friendships given to him, the memories that lingered warm within his heart. When he opened his eyes again, he smiled and stepped forward onto one path without hesitation. At once, the crossroads faded, leaving only a single glowing road ahead. Warm light shone to guide him. Eli understood now. What mattered was not which path he chose, but that he chose with confidence and walked it with a heart true to his dream. Chapter 24. The Guardian of the Current. The path led Eli to the banks of a vast river.